Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, good evening and welcome to Spectrum on Radio 1. My name is Edmond, Kizito, your host. On Spectrum tonight, on the eve of the budget speech, what are your expectations and aspirations? Tomorrow, Finance Minister Maria Shonka will read the 2012-2013 national budget on behalf of the President as the country comes to terms with the priorities of government and the source of funds to finance this budget. It is projected that the resource envelope will be 10.2 trillion shillings, with 69% of this being locally generated. It is also indicated that the priority areas are likely to be infrastructure development, human resource development, and job creation. Government has indicated that it will continue to use both monetary and non-monetary tools to ensure that the economy recovers fully from the heat or downturn it has faced this year, with emphasis being put on budget discipline and reduced public expenditure. In the 2011-2012 budget, government announced a youth venture capital fund worth 44.5 billion shillings, which was to be extended to the youth. Out of this, 16 billion was channeled through the KCCA to expand on workplaces such as markets, but currently the money is being given out to youths in form of cash. Some 25 billion shillings was supposed to be extended to youth through the three banks including DFCU, but many youth say roadblocks are too high and they cite stringent conditions. In the new budget, the Youth Venture Capital Fund is again touted as the weapon to defeat unemployment, on top of other innovations. It is reported that the fund will be later doubled to 50 billion shillings. Now, in Parliament, MPs are hoping that salaries for teachers and health workers will be raised. Teachers want a 30% increment, but government is only ready to provide 15%. Last week, President Museveni rejected demands for salary increments, saying the country needs to focus on priorities that would stimulate growth, leading to more resources and then better wages. So as we get set for the budget speech tomorrow, we look at expectations but also examine some sticking issues, including the Youth Venture Capital Fund, how it has performed, and how it can be improved. Our guests tonight, Mr. Moses Ogwal Goli, the Director of Policy Advocacy at the Private Sector Foundation. You're most welcome, Mr. Ogwal.
Thank you, Edmond, and good evening, listeners.
We're also joined by Mr. William Sekabembe, Head of Retail at the DFCU Bank. You're most welcome, Mr. Sekabembe.
Thank you, Edmond, and good evening, listeners.
We also have Mr. Sekitto, Spokesman of the Kampala City Traders Association, also known as KACITA. You're most welcome, Mr. Sekitto.
Thank you, and good evening, listeners.
Mr. Ogwal, what are your main expectations of the budget tomorrow?
Edmond, thank you. My expectations actually are my wishes and wishes of the private sector. Our main expectation is that government will channel resources to activities which will help reduce the cost of doing business. It will also channel resources in areas which will make it easy, or make it in such a way that people can earn some resources which can boost the private sector. And maybe lastly, we hope that the resources can be channeled in such a way that we can tame this monster, the instability at the macro level.
Inflation. Yeah. So how exactly would you like this money to be channeled?
The channeling could be in areas of, certainly in areas of infrastructure. Infrastructure would be very important, particularly roads into the areas where would reduce the cost of business in particular sectors or overall geographical areas. There are sectors we are thinking of, for example, tourism. Hopefully we'll say put resources in that area. Kampala itself, you look at the roads, our calculation is that you actually lose productive time for a worker of up to 40 hours in a week of 6 working days. is lost spent in traffic jam, which may be partly attributed to the bad roads within the city. But more importantly, areas of energy. Energy really is a challenge. Either we'll spend resources in that area, we should spend resources in that area because cost of energy is very critical. Infrastructure like ICT infrastructure is extremely important as we go into areas which would help reduce the doing cost of business. It may be very important to channel resources in that area. And I agree also with the statement you made, particularly in the managing of inflation and so on. I think monetary tools, we have really used monetary tools. It is time to use non-monetary tools to help fight inflation. Those tools which will help increase production, those are the tools which we expect, and it rotates around the physical policies of government. Where are they going to allocate resources which will increase food production, increase or save costs which we use for imports, so that we can hopefully help manage macroeconomic parameters like exchange rate, inflation itself, and so on, which are quite destabilizing. We have been enjoying the macroeconomic stability for the last 2 decades, but this last 1 year was a little bit destabilizing. Interest rates, which are attributed to that, should actually be managed, and we think non-monetary tools could be used properly.
That is channeling money to areas that stimulate production.
We're talking of agriculture, using a value chain approach, increase production in agriculture. We need to stimulate that so that hopefully that's where we have control. We have control. We have, the president says we have 40, I think that statement, I really remember.
40 million acres.
40 million acres. You know, the vision is there. We see what can happen. The issue is, why is it not happening?
All right.
It should happen.
Okay, we'll talk about that a little more in detail. Of course, he spoke very passionately about agriculture.
Yeah.
Donors have been raising the same concerns, but he didn't have concrete measures in his State of the Nation address. Maybe it will come tomorrow.
Maybe
in the budget.
Yeah, certainly. The State of the Nation address, I think, has strategic discussions.
Well, he spoke about other things that could have.
You may not go in too much details on strategic. The tactical ones will help.
Okay, we'll wait for the budget tomorrow. Mr. Sekitto, you would like to hear your expectations of the budget tomorrow, but you can also talk to us about how the old budget has performed.
Well, days are gone when Ugandans would wait for the budget in anticipation of either some increment on the food prices. We used to wait for the budgets. I remember when it was budget day, all the stores of my father's coffee chambers were full. There was a lot of speculation and fear. We would stock sugar, and those were the days when government would fix prices
of sugar and other things.
Today, I was trying to go to the business community and ask them about the budget. And when you go down there, they would ask you, Mr. Sekitto, we hear the minister talk about GDP, we hear the minister talking about macroeconomic policies. What are these things? Nothing is talked about increment. So ordinarily the traders I represent, we have a position as the private sector. My boss is here, the apex of the business community. My colleague at the private sector foundation, Mr. Moses, he knows that we have developed a position. But the trading community particularly, they told me to forget about anticipation of an individual, and they asked me to demand for one, that can we have accountability? They are tired of this business of the minister coming up, present proposals for 2012-2013 without spending like 30 minutes explaining the performance of the previous budget. I am anticipating that the honorable minister we have today has been with us in the private sector for long. He's a business person. There is no way you would prepare for a wedding and you went for an introduction, you skip the introduction and you go for the wedding. You need to go in the sequence. Can you tell us how did the youth money perform? How far have we gone with the electricity? Because for 3 past budgets, we have allocated billions to the energy sector. I suppose we are still demanding that more billions be allocated to the same. Before we agree to that, we would like the minister to tell us, at least not the whole coins, but the billions, the massive trillions that have been allocated to sectors. We need to have a program that talks about this is how we performed, and therefore we expect to ask for this. Also, I talked to many. You know, traders are trying to diversify. The arcades have become very complicated.
What do you mean arcades?
Business down is burning, and therefore some have run to the farms. There they are crying because the inputs, the agricultural seeds, the tractors, it is very difficult. You take your money and you can't plow it yourself, and they are not ready tractors. They are telling Mr. Sekitto, since we are failing to manage these simple businesses, the president and the government are always coming up criticizing the importers, and the majority of the KACITA members, they say, okay, let us go and do something. When they reach there, my friend, it is a tug of war. And therefore, if the agricultural sector does not have reserves for people to spend, the traders will not enjoy, because they are the buyers. The largest employer is the agricultural sector. They must have something substantially and then something for sale. Coffee is no more. Come to my
coffee is still something.
It's still something in some places, but locally, when I go to my place, the wilts and whatever have done a very big damage.
Right.
But they told me, let the government allocate some viable funds, and by viability for them, they talk about seeds, proper seeds. They talk about tractors, if they are affordable. They talk about meaningful goods for the nodes. If you are going to have the farmers spend, it is the only way the traders will enjoy the money from the farmers. If they do not have money, I'm telling you, we shall have the goods, and the goods are in the stores today, but they are not being bought. Incidentally, we have been fighting inflation in its real sense, but practically the traders don't think it is the real inflation. That's why we have categorized it as stagflation. There is a lot of goods, and they are not buying them.
Right.
Any real inflationary tendencies, there are fewer goods,
yes,
and they become expensive.
Okay.
So this situation, they are telling me, please, can you ask the government to release some money? They think the government is stubbornly not releasing the money,
right,
especially when the central bank rate. You remember, KACITA started this year on a very sad note, when we had to close for 4 days. The president promised us. One of the traders I asked, because I know I was coming here, told me, please, the president is going to be there. He told us when we demonstrated against the central bank rate and the commercial bank rates as a consequence, that he would come back to us in 5 days. 4 months down the road, maybe he will come up with a statement.
This wasn't going to happen.
So these are what we anticipate. Incidentally, because it is a mega spending,
right,
it's a mega source, we might not get all,
right,
but at least this is what we thought can come out of the budget speech tomorrow.
Okay. Of course, the budget is
whatever we wish can be matched,
right,
but somebody also prominently talked about the East African community issues,
right,
especially this business of saying we are soon starting to collect taxes from Mombasa.
Right.
The traders were saying, advise the minister not to read this statement.
Okay. Right.
If it is can be deleted, if it were there, we are saying no, not yet there.
Right. We'll get into those details. Of course, the budget is relatively smaller, 4.55 rise over the old budget, given an inflation rate of 18%. That's a very small. It's almost a shrinkage.
Okay.
In the budget. But we'll talk about those details later. Of course, the CBR has also gone up, which has slashed lending.
Okay.
People don't have money. That's as a result of that. CBR going. Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight on the eve of the budget speech. What are your expectations and aspirations? Our guest, Mr. Moses Ogwal, the Director of Policy Advocacy at the Private Sector Foundation, Mr. William Sekabembe, Head of Consumer Banking at the DFCU Bank, and Mr. Sekitto, Spokesman of the Kampala City Traders Association. You will be able to call in and contribute to this discussion. Mr. Sekabembe, you come from DFCU Bank. It was given this money for the youths. What have you been doing with this money?
Thank you, Edmond. I'll start by giving you some background on the Youth Fund and how the banks came in terms of supporting this cause. The three participating banks, that's Centenary Bank, Stanbic Bank, and DFCU, signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Uganda to be part of the disbursement of the Youth Fund. Now, the participating banks contributed half of that fund, and the government contributed half of that fund, which came to 25 billion shillings. Now, in terms of accessibility or eligibility, these terms were defined by the government of Uganda. So, as the participating banks, we are executing what was defined by the government of Uganda. We did sign around March 2012 the memorandum of understanding, and we've run for about 3 months now. I must mention that despite all the feedback that has come through the press, the three banks have done quite well, because over the past 3 months, we've disbursed over about 9 billion shillings. Now, just to give you a bit of hindsight on the eligibility, just to clarify some of the issues that probably have been raised in the public forum. This fund is typically channeled to the youth, aged between 18 and 35. Education level, which was an issue because previously the MOU spoke to an O-level certificate. After a wider consultation, the Minister of Finance with the managing directors of the three banks, this was waived. So the O-level certificate is not a requirement anymore. The amounts that the youth can access, if you're an individual and you're a youth, you can access up to 5 million. If you're a group, which group should not exceed 5 people, you can access up to 25 million shillings. The interest rate was fixed at 15% for the life of the loan. And you can imagine, my colleague here talked about the high interest rate regime, but the youth loans are disbursed at 15%.
It's about half of the market rate.
Yes. In terms of the grace period, depending on the nature of sector or business you're doing, there's an option for you to take a grace period of up to 1 year. Purpose of the loan is to grow your business or expand it, and I need to emphasize that point because this is not startup capital. You should have been in business for at least 3 months, and you put up a proposal or go to any of these banks and apply. So if you do not have a business, you do not qualify. The loan goes up to 4 years. That's about 48 months. You need to have a guarantor because this is pure unsecured lending.
No land titles.
No land titles. What you need is to have a reputable guarantor. And the reason that I believe the government put this as a condition was because the youth loan is a sinking fund. When we lend to individuals and they pay back, we need to lend to more individuals, which means that this youth fund will not end with this financial year. It goes beyond this financial year. It's a sinking fund. So as the custodians, we the commercial banks, we are mandated to ensure that we lend prudently so that we can recover this money so that we can have more youth benefiting from this fund. Training also caused a bit of grappling earlier, and this was also waived. You don't have to be trained as a youth to go through the earlier training recommended. So long as you're in business and you can demonstrate that this business is running and has been running for the last 3 months, you are eligible. There's also another aspect of this youth loan of you being able to create employment for at least 4 people during the tenure of the loan repayment. And the reason for this was the youth fund is meant to create opportunities in terms of employment. So any youth that has access to this loan should be able to create employment so that it achieves its overall objective. There was also an issue around registration because most of the sectors that the youth are involved probably are agro-based, which means that they're not formally registered. Now, primary agriculture businesses do not require to be registered, and that I need to be clear. However, if you're an entity and you're formally registered, of course, the normal laws of Uganda apply, so we require you to provide all that necessary documentation. But if you're into primary agriculture business, we don't need any form of registration. So over the past 3 months, we've engaged the youth. We've put up a sensitization workshop to take them through, because as soon as the government announced, we had so many coming to our banking halls, but we had to support them in terms of the documentation required and how to put together a business case or proposal, and that we've done. We have arranged several workshops in different geographical locations where we are represented as the banks. And generally speaking, given the period that we've been operating this fund,
It's rolling out well.
in my mind, I believe it's rolling out very well.
9 billion shillings in 3 months out of 25 billion shillings.
Yes.
The rest will be pushed to the next financial year and will continue to be given
It
out.
continues, and we are open for business.
This is Spectrum on Radio 1. We're going for a break. We'll be back.
When Junior lost his appetite, his mother tried all methods to get him to eat. She tried scary stories.
Eat, Tommy, eat, or the big black elephant will come and eat all your food.
She tried magic.
Tommy, if you eat your food, I will turn this handkerchief into sweets. Look, bumble, bumble, boom, boom.
Then she discovered Apetol multivitamin syrup with lysine.
Mommy, I finished all the food. I am number 1.
Apetol multivitamin with lysine is helping mothers to turn mealtime frustration to a fun moment. Apetol has a great taste and contains lysine, which quickly improves your child's appetite and supports healthy growth. Apetol, help for life.
Join Airtel today and get 50% bonus airtime instantly. That's right, 50% bonus airtime to call across all networks. Simply buy and register a new Airtel SIM card. Top up 1,000 shillings and more, and 50% bonus airtime to call across all networks is yours. Join Airtel today. Get bonus today.
Airtel. John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special. You've earned it.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight on the eve of the budget speech, what are your expectations and aspirations? Our guest tonight, Mr. Moses Ogwal, Director of Policy Advocacy at the Private Sector Foundation, Mr. William Sekabembe, Head of Consumer Banking at the DFCU Bank, and Mr. Issa Sekitto, Spokesman of the KACITA, the Kampala City Traders Association. You too will be able to contribute to this discussion. I'll read out the numbers when that time comes so you can call it. But you can also send us text messages. Text message, type the word Spectrum in your phone browser. Message, question or comment, send it to 7197. That is Spectrum, message, question or comment, send it to 7197. Mr. Ogwal Goli, is the government doing enough to balance this budget?
It is difficult for me to say whether it is doing enough, but I think with the long period, I think the attempts are there to try to ensure, at least on the side of the private sector, that the cost of business is reduced.
And are we doing enough, pressing the right buttons to reduce unemployment broadly?
We are seeing, no, particularly let me talk of issues of reducing cost of business. I see roads, a lot of roads are being built. I see energy. I'm sure you'll agree that of recent it's a little bit more stable. It was so bad at the beginning of the year. Hopefully that could be, we could agree that the government is doing something in that direction,
right.
and it has been affecting the whole region,
okay.
But it is improving. But what I can say is that from our analysis as private sector, we we always get good reception from government.
They listen to
they listen to us. We've seen that in the range of the last 3-4 years, 75% of the proposals which we put to government are acceptable. The only challenge we've been having, and we put this to government, that out of this 75%, in the 2 years, the actual activities which result into reduction of business is quite low. It is as low as 30%. It's about
that's lip service.
It's not really fully lip service, but the actions have not matured quickly.
The spirit is willing,
corresponding to our expectations.
The body is weak.
Yeah.
I'd like us to move forward. Let's talk briefly about unemployment. Beyond, against the backdrop of what you just said, the Youth Venture Capital Fund. Can it help slash unemployment?
The venture fund?
Yes.
I think unemployment, in my view, it is not a shortcut where you just solve it with
well, but one 5 million shillings creating 4 jobs, that's not bad.
No, you will just have money, but you may not have a proper job if you don't do much. I think the whole issue of resources or money, I'm looking at it in the private sector.
Yes.
If it is supposed to be sustainable, you must have only money as your only problem. If you have money and...
Well, that's a big problem, lack of capital.
This is what I'm explaining to you on the private sector side. If it has to be sustainable, you should have money to be the only problem which is lacking for you to take off.
Right.
But if you have money and issues like management and other priorities, you will most likely not use this money very well, and it may not be sustainable. So money is just...
Well, but you're sounding skeptical. Our traders do a very good job. They're not trained anywhere. Why do you start from that?
No, it is... I'm not skeptical. Actually, the traders you are talking about, they build a lot of experience. There are so many people who try trading and fail straight away. My colleague Kizito will tell you. There's a lot of experience which you must cultivate to be able to do any business.
Okay. Mr. Sekitto, talk to us about, very briefly about balancing the budget, but mostly about unemployment, with the perspective of the Venture Capital Fund.
I think we need to be very, very firm on this, because it is the source of the problem that for the last 3 budgets that I've been listening to and attending, private sector has gotten right reception, like 75%, as Mr. Ogwal has mentioned. Unfortunately, it ends at these proposals. You get the reception of your views, they are put on table, they are accepted. The minister meets you, says, very good. We in all club go down to calculate how much has been performed, and you will not meet this. If what is being approved is what is being done on the ground, we would be miles and miles away. So this is a very, very, very big gap. On the side of employment, my brother, it is very threatening that you remember when we engaged the government together as the teachers, private sector, the foundation, KACITA, talk about any other item. It was mentioned before the president and the governor that many businesses are going to collapse, and these are large employers. What was mentioned that by the governor himself, that about 20 to 25% of businesses will close. We are talking about, he mentioned it, and it has happened. Go around Kampala as a case study and see spaces for rent posters. Whenever you see space for rent, somebody collapsed. And if somebody collapses in Kampala, many children will drop out of school, because we have a chain of dependence. Since we do not have people with the purchasing power in the villages, they all depend on us in Kampala. You close one shop, you will have closed about 3-4 families. So this is very, very, very bad situation, which we must think about. This is a macroeconomic problem.
Right.
By trying to solve inflation, which is also a macroeconomic problem, we are creating a worse monster called unemployment. So we need to balance the two. And I have been educated and sensitized very much by Mr. Sekabembe. I have very many youth. I have teams of youth in Deje. They were all running back to me saying, you know, Muzee, this money is impossible.
Now you know.
I think I now go out. In fact, if there is a big benefit I've gotten out of this program, is that my youth will access the fund, or else they were thinking it was impossible.
Okay, Mr. Sekabembe, talk to us about this. How powerful is it as a tool to deliver employment, jobs?
Unemployment is a huge challenge for this country, certainly. If you look at the demographies of this country, almost 60% of the population is below the age of 18. So which means that the problem will not go away today or tomorrow. Everything has a beginning. In my mind, I think if we can grow this youth fund and ensure that we lend prudently as the banks and the money is returned for other people to access it, I think that's the first step. But also, on the other hand, I think it will be important that we equip the youth with skills, vocational skills, to be able to use the skills to earn money. The biggest problem we have here also stems from our education system. Education system is more of equipping us with the textbook kind of skills, which we cannot effectively translate into actual skills on the ground. So we also need to revise our education system so that as people go through the education system, when they come out in the market space, they can be able to feed off their skills.
Create jobs.
Yes.
And not become job seekers themselves. How much money would you be comfortable having in your kitty next year?
As bank, as I mentioned, we are open for business and we have the capacity to handle
50 billion shillings.
Even the 50 billion. We have enough branch.
What's the ideal? What would make you comfortable?
You see, as banks, I can't say 10 or 20 billion. We can even handle, because we handle even 100 billion, 200 billion. So the key thing is that how many youth can access this fund, and are they using the funds effectively to achieve the objective? I think for me that's the ultimate. And if we can reach to as many youth who will also help create employment, I think we would have achieved the objective overall. Yes.
Mr. Ogwal, is government spending enough on health and education? Some of the allocations have gone down. Works has got more money, maybe to gives you joy because they're going to spend more on roads. But health has suffered, education has suffered.
Sure. I think a government pass is really limited. You may not get, in my view, as much as you want, maybe to go to education, to go to health. But I'm happy that the environment put is in such a way that it helps at least the private sector to fill in a gap. If you look at education, it may be expensive, but you can see, I'm sure my colleague here would agree, the gap that the private sector is trying to fill is helpful in education. In health also, we think the same is happening. That's why in our own request was that we have resources, we can help the private sector develop these two sectors. Actually, the type of fund which Mr. Sekabembe is talking about, 50-50, we could support the health sector, private sector, health sector development, could help fill the gap. The PPP approach,
private-public partnership,
in a way would help fill the gap. You can actually, in my view, because of the resources.
But that's a tiny thing, and it's only beginning to be kicked off. Well, Mr. Sekitto,
yes,
the government is slashing the agriculture budget by 22%. The budget from the budget papers that was sent in advance, about 1/5 has been slashed off that budget.
Which for the government?
Yes.
I think this is something that needs, clapping by everybody. What we have been suffering from is excessive government expenditure.
When they spend less on agriculture, you're happy?
No, you mean on the...
They've reduced the budget for agriculture.
Oh, no. I think
has also come down 8% from 9%.
No. I wouldn't support this. But when you don't have enough, you must survive and see the best way to allocate this. What we have been advocating for quite a while is that you cannot develop all sectors at a go. If you decide that we are going to do electricity, please do that thoroughly and have it, such that in the consequential budgets that do come, you are only supplementing little bits of it while the main grid is now fully supplied. But if you have to do everything for a year, we should have thematic concerns. What is the theme for this year? This business of saying prosperity for all this kind, the things that we capture in our budgets at times are not realistic. This is why you hear that to impress the farmers, let us do this. To impress the traders, let us get this. To impress the manufacturers, let's talk about this. Let's forget about talking about everything. Can we talk about everything in their meager sizes, but also have main concepts for each budget? This is how the Mauritians did it. They will say all this chunk is going for roads. They will say this one we are now dedicating it to ITC.
Right,
they will say we are dedicating this to health.
Yeah.
When you talk about dedicating the budget to health for the two coming budgets, you would just be mentioning it with the very small allocations. Right. So you can't think that every thing must be given.
So you won't complain about it?
I don't complain. It will depend on how what is on paper is implemented on the ground. Because you will hear them coming, going to Parliament and saying, no, can you give us extra for this? Yet the allocations, they thrashed the budgets, they said we are cutting this for this. Then as the tough times comes, you hear billions being asked for as supplementary budgets.
Okay, let's hear from the listeners. This is Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight on the eve of the budget speech. What are your expectations and aspirations? You can call in now. Our number is 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0312-261-390. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you're calling from. Spectrum, hello? Yes, sir, your name? Good evening.
Thanks for the visit to the studio.
Spectrum, hello? Yes, sir, your name?
Yes, my name is Kizito.
Yeah, you. Please go on.
Gentlemen in the studio.
All right, Spectrum, hello. Good evening, sir. Your name? Spectrum, hello. Yes, sir, your name? Hello. Yes, Peter, you're most welcome. All right, let's take our final caller for tonight. Spectrum, hello.
Spectrum.
Yes, sir, your name?
Fred.
Yes, Fred.
I'm going from Vesta.
You're live on air, please go on.
Yeah, my question.
Mr. William Sekabembe.
Thank you very much, Edmond. I'll respond to the questions that touch the youth fund. A gentleman asked that we've only disbursed a portion. I also just need to emphasize that we rolled out in March this year in terms of the participating banks, and we've as of date we've disbursed about 9 million, not exact, but about 9 billion, and we're processing quite a bit of loans as I speak. We have several files that have been put through. Just that the process takes a bit of time because we need to take it through a certain stages, because we need to verify existence of business and verify a few other things. And I also need to emphasize that this youth fund that is sitting with the banks does not end with the budget. It's a sinking fund, so it's going to evolve. And also need to emphasize that also the banks contributed half of this money. So in terms of the requirements, since this is also depositors' money, we need to lend prudently. So that's why we ask for certain requirements to ensure that the money is paid back for other youths to benefit. So it's not that we are rushing to beat the deadline. This fund will run even beyond this financial year because it's a sinking fund. Thank you.
Mr. Ogwal.
Yeah, I think when you hear most of the statements, AM actually mentioned a good one, mentioning that there's money in poultry, which means there's money in agriculture.
There's money in rabbits as well. People spoke about and then people failed to sell their rabbits.
Rabbits, maybe I wouldn't comment so much on rabbits, but he mentions that poultry, there is money. I want to believe that there is money actually in agriculture. What we need to do is to scale people and support them. Work in a process of a value chain, possibly with a lead partner in the private sector. That could be the approach which could help interventions like banks, insurance, and so on. It will help create employment in a more sustainable way. We are extremely lucky because the market is big, it is promising, and that's the best thing private sector would want. That's what I would mention particularly on that. And Mabonga, I think Mabonga is straight to the point. We need to support agriculture. I think that is when I talked of the fiscal policies to increase production. I think we could do a little bit more, but it is not, in my view, there could be a mistake. When you said slashing the budget of agriculture,
yes,
I think the budget of agriculture is not determined with what goes to the Ministry of Agriculture.
Yes,
it is determined.
The budget is cross-cutting.
Yes, cross-cutting. There's the lending of the money we are talking about, supporting the roads. There are so
other
many
indirect revenues.
Yeah, other indirect revenues.
It could be arguable.
So
yes,
that's what I think.
All right, Mr. Sekitto.
Yeah. I only need to appeal to the concerned banks that I'm one of the few people that think that follow up many things that they will happen. If I were thinking so negatively about this fund, can I ask the banks to come out through the media here and other fora
and speak out
and speak about this, such that they demystify this information that is distorted, people almost hating the whole project, yet 9 billion has already been reimbursed, and people don't have knowledge about this. They don't have the information about it. I'm asking that they come out and educate us and our children more about this.
Right.
Secondly, there is also this problem of KACITA members diversifying to go to agriculture. This has been appealed, and also in the value addition chain. The only disadvantage we are finding is that while government is busy and seriously encouraging us to do so, it is also seriously importing importers in the form of Indians and Chinese.
Just exported some of
this is serious. It's a serious concern. Yesterday we were doing a sampling of an operation. We went with the migration officers, other bureaus like the Bureau of Standards,
yes.
We went with like URA, and just on Rome Street.
You found many foreigners?
No, we got 48 illegal migrants, and they are due for deportation.
What were they doing? Maybe they provide unique services.
No, they come, they sell shoes, they come, they are selling shirts. Really, this is not the nature of investors we would wish to have. It is a very big appeal to government to please feel firm to say that we all need to go in the areas, investors need to go in areas where the Ugandans do not have capacity to.
Right.
Just retailing on the small shops cannot grow this economy. Otherwise, how are we going to compete with those?
Of course, we have to guard against being xenophobic.
Well, we cannot be this, but you know, when Ugandans are deported from all walks of life, we don't demand them of xenophobia. This is a normal audit in the migration processes. Okay. Uganda should not allow every Tom and Dick to do the petty trade here. It cannot. How are we going to promote and encourage our members to go into agriculture, value addition, yet we are importing importers?
Mr. Sekabembe, very briefly, give us a profile of the people taking this money. What do they do? Chapati on the streets or what?
It's a wide range of youth taking this loan, from agriculture, poultry, dairy, people in very small businesses, even up to people doing chapatis. We've supported some in Wandegea. So it's a wide spectrum.
No sports betting.
No sports betting, not at all.
Mr. Ogwal, not at all. Very briefly on that point before we leave. You had to say something about what Kizito was saying.
No, what Kizito was saying, and what my colleague was saying about the financial literacy. I think private sector is doing something about that. We are rolling out programs related to financial literacy outside in Kampala and outside Kampala. Still began and will still continue into doing that, which possibly would be helpful into the process of finances.
Very briefly, budget discipline. Has the government been spending money well, or do they have holes in their pockets?
I think budget discipline needs to be improved. Usually when you see supplementary budgets, it is an indication that possibly the discipline could be improved. That's what I would...
supplementary budget is better than corruption. So we better emphasize
corruption. Is a bad thing?
Yeah, it is worse. And if you see that, there can't be financial discipline. If you see corruption...
So corruption must be fought.
Exactly.
Some people think it creates a middle class and it helps us develop very quickly.
I don't believe so.
You don't agree with that?
Yes.
We have to go. Thank you very much, dear guests. Mr. Moses Ogwal Wali, the Director of Policy Advocacy at the Private Sector Foundation. Thank you for coming to Spectrum, sir. Mr. William Sekabembe, Head of Consumer Banking at the DFCU Bank. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Mr. Sekitto, Spokesman for the Kampala City Traders Association, also KACITA. The last time we spoke, you are expanding it, taking it countrywide. How have you gone?
Very far.
We'll talk
Next
about
week
that.
I'm going to Arua.
We'll talk about that another time. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond. The Spectrum will be back tomorrow. Up next is the news in English.
You are seated in a car, talking on your phone.
How are you, Mama?
And from nowhere, boom, a thief snatches